But this baby is alive. This baby is a human being. She's not excluded from the human family simply because her thought processes may not be the same as others. For heaven's sakes, lots of folks with dementia in the nursing homes can't form attachments, aren't aware of their surroundings. She's not disqualified as a member of the human family simply because she's profoundly disabled.
I think from the beginning, I would have been concerned about these parents, and I don't know if I would have dealt with them in isolation. I would have wanted to know more about their support system. These parents need to be prepared for the fact that this baby may not survive. I would have started that preparation in the beginning, but I would have sought some help in terms of dealing with them because they're in a very difficult situation.
I think it's important to tell these parents the truth, even while you acknowledge that it's now the parents who are your patients in a sense, and that they really do have the final decision.
So this is, to me, beginning to sound rather holistic.
I think it's about the source of life and the purpose of life. Sanctity of life is kind of a political term. And you know the teaching of our church that when death becomes inevitable, it should be looked on as a blessing and a purposeful part of eternal existence. I'm not telling you what to do or when to do it, but I am urging you as my friends and fellow believers to see what has happened to Hope as something that's happened to a daughter of God who loves her as much as you do, and who in the great eternal scheme of things is going to see that she is not denied any advantage in the eternities. And while I think you surely should not give up hope, if I can say it in that way, in the short term, take the long view and seek guidance through your prayers and your personal consultation with one another.
But Elder Oaks, just tell me, you know we tried to have a baby a long time.
Yes.
We've listened to the church on the desire to have children.
Yes.
If we do this now, are we going to kill her? Will that be on our hands if we say yes to that turning off that machine?
No, because you will be dealing with a situation that's known to your Heavenly Father, and He does not guarantee any of us unlimited existence. As I've heard some other people of other faiths say, we're sent here with a certain period of time, and perhaps her period is short. And you could not realistically expect to sustain her life by heroic measures through a lifetime. And I don't think that that's expected of you by a Heavenly Father who understands the conditions of this circumstance.
Dr. Campbell, unfortunately, as a result of the prolapse, Hope has now experienced renal failure. They want dialysis.
The concern for Hope is that even with maintaining full support for her, her organs would begin to fail, and we're seeing that now. We could initiate dialysis, but it's really forestalling an inevitable process for her. She is dying.
She is dying.
I don't care how many.
No, she is dying. That presents a different situation.
Why?
A medical opinion has been given to us by a doctor whom I trust, because when others said think of cost benefits and think of quality of life and think of all these things, she said no. Let's keep Hope alive and see what's happening. She saw Hope as that person regardless of what her potential or quality of life was. But now this same doctor is saying to me, your baby is dying.
Will this dialysis hurt?
He obviously wants the dialysis.
You can't do anything that's futile. We do have a standard. We're not going to do anything that we know is not going to be helpful. We won't do a sham treatment.
Will the dialysis be helpful?
From the point of view of the renal failure, it'll stop the renal failure from killing her, but It's unfolding. We have to face
funny,
reality, and there's a reality test here.
If
and
the reality here is that our baby, from all medical indications, not quality of life indications, not cost indications, not any other indications, but if the medical indications are that our baby is dying, then I think that's a case where we say, what is the benefit here to Hope of putting her through a treatment like that when we know that we are looking from a medical perspective at her death?
The kidney specialists say we won't do it. And this would now be a clash between the parents' desires and at least one segment of the medical community's insistence that it's not appropriate. Then it goes to the ethics committee.
And you're it.
And I'm it. And what we ask is, what is the potential benefit to the person, to Hope, not to her kidneys as isolated organs, because we don't just deal with kidneys and hearts and livers and spleens. We deal with this whole person. Against the horizon of her eternity, what's the benefit that we can offer to her? We listen to the doctors. Dr. Campbell tells us this is a cascade of incidents. She's going down. We're unable to reverse these. This is the first of the multiple organs that has failed, but others are surely going to fail. And the ethics committee would rule there's no obligation to provide an intervention that doesn't offer a realistic medical expectation of significant restoration to the patient.
And that's what she should tell them.
That's what the ethics committee will tell the physicians, because we're only asked about the ethics of it.
All right, let me give you an alternative world. It's still baby Hope. She has severe brain damage. But she can see, she can feel, she can hear. But she has a defect in her intestine. And of course, Dr. Campbell, you'd be ready to do the procedure. Now here's the rub. When you talk to the parents say no. And you know this baby will die without the operation. And you know what they're thinking about. Some of these children never talk. They never get out of diapers. They're a burden. These parents don't want that burden. Does their will control?
We do need to elicit from parents their views, their values, and that does have to factor into our discussions in terms of what we offer a baby. You're also talking about
the parents are a
pain
brick
and
wall. We do not want the operation on the child.
Actually, in the context of a baby who you're describing as neurologically very compromised, but able to feel pain and able to suffer, it's adding another burden on this baby without potential benefit beyond just correcting the problem.
Dr. Rogers?
I agree with Dr. Campbell.
Nothing you can do? And he's shaking his head again. Every time you talk, he shakes his head.
if this baby is going to live a life and it's going to be ended because I'm withholding what would be normal medical care for any other baby in this situation, I have to ask myself, am I being complicit in terminating this baby's life unnecessarily?
But can you impose that set of values on those?
I'm not imposing anything. I'm bringing that set of values. At the same time, if you're in my hospital, in my ICU, am I going to withhold a routine procedure that I've done to other babies because this is a baby you don't want to take home? This procedure will keep the baby alive.
How do you ignore the wishes of the parents? No.
Well, I have to ask myself.
I'll sick the lawyers on you.
Well, I'll get my own lawyers and protect the baby, because the baby's interests and the parents' interests are now becoming divergent, and my patient is this baby.
This case is very different from the other one. In the other case, we're presuming there was no higher brain function.
Right, this baby has a cortex.
The first baby was incapable of suffering. So it was beyond suffering, in a sense. And so it had no best interest in that narrow definition. Here you have a baby who presumably is capable of suffering. So once again, what I'm asking is, that we look at it from the baby's point of view, not just the baby's intestine, but fast forward months, years. What will be the condition of this baby? How much suffering will this baby endure?
Well, that's not the whole
and
thing.
if the baby endures terrible suffering for the rest of his or her life, then I would side with the parents.
This is a
if
baby,
that were not an issue, then I think I would think about going to court and getting guardianship. But that's the key issue. What does this mean to the baby? Not to the baby's intestine, but to the degree of suffering that will be a part of this baby's life.
This is a baby who's going to see and feel and hear. This is a baby who's going to
Is it going to feel
things.
pain? Is it going to feel misery?
It's going to feel the love of its mother, and it's going to hear things. And as far as I know, this is a baby that can relate with the world somehow, at least receptively.
I'm getting the strange feeling that it's a complete crapshoot which doctor you get.
It sure is.
I mean,
It is a little bit.
Congressman, shouldn't there be a law about this?
On it. I mean,
isn't it a crapshoot what parents you
maybe
get?
I wasn't clear. Then that, if the baby
Not with
can't
us,
walk,
Emmy.
I'm saying that the fact that the parents see it as a burden is irrelevant.
If they see it as a burden on themselves, that's irrelevant. But if they see this, as Marsha puts it, as a horrendous burden
I
on the
agree.
baby, it's very different.
If you're talking about someone who is going to only breathe and have no other element of life, that's an easy one. But if you are then saying, well, on balance, is this individual going to suffer more pain than pleasure? That's not a calculation the law would make. I would say if you're talking about someone who will be able to exist off a respirator, a sentient being, I would put a heavy burden of proof on keeping that baby alive.